This is Diamond D with where I'm giving you some love advice, some happiness advice, some everyday good advice to make your day a little more loving. Hi, I'm Diamond D, and this is Love and Happiness, where we will discuss everyday topics about love and happiness to make your day a little bit better. Our guest today is Dr. Malik Muhammad, who is a psychologist focused on mental health services to various demographics and the author of a new book, My Silent Loud. Please welcome Dr. Muhammad to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you for being on the show today. I appreciate you.
Of course.
So tell me a little bit about your book, My Silent Loud, and why you decided to write it.
This book right here is a book that I wrote essentially intentionally to myself. But and in the dedication, I say to my younger self, I dreamt of being me and it came true. The purpose of it is, what did I need to hear when I was younger that maybe didn't hear or heard later on in life?
And so you're self-published.
Self-published.
And so let's talk a little bit about the photo on the front of the page of the book.
Okay, so there's the artist that designed it. His name is the artist Salam Muhammad. But what had happened is I've been looking for different book covers, and I didn't want one that was just bland and had text and everything like that. And I saw this cover. I saw this picture, and by God's grace, I literally did some Googling, found out who designed it, and had a response from the artist within 15 minutes.
Oh, very good.
Yeah. So I called him and we talked. I said, bro, look, I don't really mean to piggyback off of something you already done. I don't know how you feel about that. But I want this image, but I want a Biggie crown on it. Mm-hmm. I said, but I want the Biggie crown and I want it tilted. He said, I got it. All right. Said, no problem. And the significance of the crown to me is being a little king, a little king inside. But you see he's crying. Mm-hmm. And part of that is, I think, the energy behind that for me was that he's loud inside. It's coming out. And at that point, it was coming out as tears. Again, I'm talking to myself. And those tears were not necessarily anger, but just frustration, sadness, a lot of things that Black boys experience. But he's still a king. Right. That duality is existing inside of him. And so that's what I was hoping he would capture. But there's actually biblical scriptures on one arm. Biblical scriptures on one arm.
I see Genesis 2:17, Matthew 9:32.
Yes. All of them are focused on eternal glory and self-elevation. And then on the other arm, it's slang sayings, derogatory ones, which is the yin and yang that young Black boys are dealing with, the cultural stigmas and stuff like that. But it's also fitting because from a distance it looks like he just has tattoos.
Exactly.
You know, but so it's a lot going on just in the cover, and and it matched what I wanted to write about in the book. The chapters in the book are written almost like a text message, 2 pages max. Okay. And I wrote it mainly because assuming younger boys were going to be reading it, maybe not the longer attention spans of adults, but also sometimes it doesn't take that long to get your point across. Okay, I want them to be able to get that nugget and put it down, come back to it when they want something else. What's been interesting is that men, women, and younger boys have all read it and all have gotten different things out of it. And that to me is just nothing but God working with them. Right. And me as a conduit at this point in the journey, which I think has been really, really great for me. Because I get a lot of feedback. I'm like, oh, I remember reading this chapter and I got this from it, this and that. And I was like, wow, okay. Because again, I just wrote it off of positive energy inside of me, no goal in mind, no pressure. So you always hear about writers having writer's block. I don't consider myself a writer, but I guess I could say I'm one now.
Exactly, published.
But more than anything, I would get a sentence from a conversation, and that would be the title of the chapter. And I would just write my thoughts on it,
very good,
and then put it down. Really good.
Yeah, I read the book, and I thought it was very well written and very good. In the book, you talk about protecting our young Black men.
Yes.
I thought that was fascinating about how you explained the need for protection. Could you elaborate on that point?
My position has been that the girls have been protected, rightfully so, and on some level the African American boys have been allowed to fend for themselves. Okay, so when the African American male is successful, it's almost like, wow, you did it, versus what I believe 40, 50 years ago, it was the expectation. You're gonna go to school, you're gonna be great. So the protection can also be physical, but my book is more focusing on the spiritual, emotional side of Black boys is not protected. There's not a lot of pat on the backs. There's not a that boys. So one of the things that I do in my own home is I always say to my boys, good job, good job, good job. And my wife always says, good job, good job. But now what happens is my sons will come to me and say, Daddy, did I do a good job? That means to me, it's getting in their system that they can do it, they will do it. So part of the protection too is learning how to give them permission to protect themselves.
Yes.
Trust their own thoughts, trust their own contribution to any conversation versus falling back.
Yes.
When I take them to school in the morning, I say, y'all are the smartest ones in the room, and I expect you to be. And I give them those expectations, but also I do also allow them room to make mistakes. Right. So it's not straight A's. I don't care if they get straight A's. It's not the goal. Everyone's not going to get straight A's, but I want them to come out of their journey educationally intact.
Right. Exactly.
As people.
Exactly.
As people.
And you're validating them. You're helping them to see their purpose.
Yes.
And giving them a reason to keep on pressing on to another day.
Yes.
I know that you also mentioned about crying, how it's not acceptable for black men or black boys to cry. Why do you think that's the case?
Misconception. Somehow, I think that we can go. I think it's multi-layered. We can talk about masculinity, which is one part of it. Then there's the cultural norms of being cool for African American men. I mean, being cool is valued above anything in my culture. And so the concept of crying is just stripping away all of that. I mean, I don't even know if an young African American male can recover from crying in front of his boys.
What about his wife or his lady?
I still say, hell no. Someone told me once, he said, you can go fight off 5 lions, 10 leopards in the middle of the jungle with some flip-flops on and come home, and if you cry in front of your wife, she's still going to call you a punk. And on some level, I think that's true. And I don't think that it's inherently my wife's being mean or anything like that. I think it's her own upbringing of expectations. And those have been challenges we've had in our marriage, but I think good challenges because we now have different conversations when she comes and says, I thought when you're walking down the street and a guy says something to me, you're supposed to defend me. And I would say, I ain't saying nothing. We're going to keep walking. And so her position was, well, you're being a punk. Well, we've been married almost 10 years now, and I said to her, but I'd rather be a punk and come home to you versus I stood up for you and now I'm dead.
It's all about making smart choices.
Yeah.
I think, the scenario that you alluded to, I think it's all about being sensitive to your environment.
Yes.
And sensitive to who you are as a person.
Yes.
So how do you balance that when you're raising your boys to be sensitive and allow them to cry, but still be brave and courageous and protect their lady? How do you balance that?
It's so easy. I think it's so easy because the word, I like the fact that you brought up the word sensitive. A lot of women I grew up around would try and belittle me with that word. Oh, you're just being sensitive. And I mean, I would go into the shell. Oh my God, maybe I'm being But as I've gotten older, I realized my strength comes from my sensitivity. And it's just one of those old sayings, still waters run deep. Just because I'm not puffing my chest up doesn't mean I won't hurt you. And be able to understand myself. So how do I raise my sons? I tell my sons, get that energy out. Go ahead and cry it out. It's fine. And now what you going to do? You get both processes. I don't skip to be a man, stand up, and all that nonsense, because if you don't have the skill sets for it, then you're just filling in a hole. Then it's just a facade. There's no real essence there. But there's a time and a place to fight and defend. I get it. And I tell my son, someone put their hands on you to win a different conversation. I'm not saying anyone hurts you, but you're not a predator either. You're not going out intentionally trying to hurt someone.
Good advice. I see that we have time for our first caller. Hello, caller. You're on the air with Love and Happiness with Diamond D and Dr. Muhammad. How can we help you?
Yes, I'm dating this guy, and I really like him. And I think he likes me too, but he's really a mama's boy, and he goes to see her every day. I'm not sure what to do about this. His mom doesn't like me, and I don't really care for her either. I'm struggling to hang on to see how to figure out how to deal with him who's still hanging on to his mom.
Okay, thank you for your question. I'm going to put you on hold while Dr. Muhammad advises.
There's a theory that I have, grown men versus grown boys. And what that means is, did the man's body get older, but his mind stayed young, versus his mind and body growing up in parallel? And sometimes when we talk about a mama's boy, we're talking about grown men versus a grown man physically, but still a boy inside. And you can see that. I always tease, but that's the man at the club with the Jesus cross on. Is 20 years older than everybody up in there. And I'm thinking probably more grown boy. right? But then you have to be really clear on what's the difference between that and a man that just loves his mother. Okay. But a lot of times I think one of the symptoms, an easy way to kind of pull that apart is, does he go there when you all have a fight?
Oh.
Or does he stay with you and resolve it? But if he's like, I'm going to stay at my mama's house, we're talking about someone that may not know how to be in a relationship.
I think that sometimes that you get into relationships with men who haven't really cut the apron strings yet.
Correct.
And they're used to their mom being supportive of
Correct.
them, and then they go into a situation with their lady expecting that same level of support.
Correct.
Which brings me to the next question. Like, what do you think a single woman should be looking for when she's looking for a man to, as a husband, or to settle down with?
Okay. I think she should be looking for someone that makes her happy. And let me say it another way so it's not so abstract. Part of the responsibility, I think, for African American women is, why are you going for the ones that keep breaking your heart? What's there? So yes, how many mama's boys have you dated? Okay, versus have you dated your friend?
Yeah.
Can you be a friend to a man that you haven't dated? Do you understand there's a difference?
Okay, Dr. Muhammad, you also talk about in your book the necessity of a man to feel needed and valued in a marriage. Could you elaborate on this need and how this need impacts the overall marriage?
Yes. So, and I know from early on in my marriage, without necessarily direct sentences, and so maybe sometimes direct sentences, my wife would say, well, I don't need you, I don't need you, I don't need you. Or there was this, I can do it on my own. And it wasn't so much that I ever doubted that she couldn't do it on her own, but it was, well, what are you trying to tell me? What's my role here if you can do everything on your own? We're supposed to be sharing this journey. And also it's important, just as a person, like it's not that I think a man or a woman is leaning on a person's validation necessarily, but there's nothing wrong with wanting to be appreciated. And that's what I had to kind of tease out for myself. Am I upset about not feeling wanted, or am I feeling like my efforts and my extras are just expectations versus something that should be appreciated? And also, as African American male, if the world is telling you you don't exist, you're invisible, and you're nothing, then you go home and you're told you don't exist, you're invisible, and you're nothing, then where do I feel whole? Where do I feel valued? Where do I feel like I have a contribution? And one of the things I told my wife, I said, our vows are to death do us part. I said, but be very clear, my vow to myself was until neither one of us are happy. I just can't believe that God will put me on earth to just be miserable with you forever based on a vow. That doesn't seem fair to me or to you. Or our children now that we have them. Because I would always say to her, I refuse to let them believe this is the model.
Being a good role model so that they'll know what kind of wife to get.
I refuse. That's just not an option. That's not fair to them.
Yes.
They got to clean up stuff they saw us do later on. I will not be a part of that. We're better than that.
So what qualities do you think goes into being a good wife? What would you want to see your son marry in terms of having a good woman, having a good wife?
Sure.
And give us some feedback on that.
I would like to see my sons marry someone that they're not afraid to be alone with. And what I mean by that is couples where, as soon as you leave, they ain't talking, they have no conversation, they have no mutual shared interest. I would be happiest as a father to see my children laughing with their spouses. Really like as if they just met. I would hope they'd be those couples you hate seeing because they're so gushy and stuff in front of you. But that's just a great start. Because as my mother would say, well, you're going to swallow razor blades sometimes. Sometimes you're going to beef. You're going to have some problems. But generally speaking, I would like to see them marry their best friend.
Exactly.
That would be great.
And you have to have that disagreement with respect.
Yes.
You should be able to talk it over and be able to compromise when there is some type of disagreement or conflict.
Absolutely.
But I do think that it is important to have good married role models.
Yes.
So who were your role models before you guys said I do?
I don't know if I had a bunch. And what I mean by that, I definitely was around a lot of married couples. I think what was missing looking back was the conversations about what happens when they don't get along. But that was one of the examples, that was one of the positives that I actually discovered with my own mother, who's married, her and her husband married over 20 some odd years, is once I got married, I could talk to my mom about our marriage, but not in a way where I'm telling all me and my wife's business, nothing like that. but more like I'm mad, and my mom be like, well, y'all be fine tomorrow, and I'll be on the phone. No, I hate her. I'm gonna kick all of this. She's like, well, you married her, she yours. Like my mother would never let me out the ring. You know, but the advice was, well, what did you think it was gonna be? I'm like, well, no one told me. She's like, no. She's like, this wouldn't have made sense to you until you were in it. And I thought that was the greatest, because my mother would tell me she would do the same thing when she got married to my father, who's now passed away. And she was go to her parents' house, and her dad would be like, you can be here an hour or two, but you're going home. And I think that's important. So I think I learned more from actually the doing part of it, but also hearing like, okay, this happens to everybody. Yes.
I think we have time for a second caller. Hello, caller. You're on the air with Love and Happiness with Diamond D and Dr. Muhammad. How can we help you?
I was just curious what your thoughts were on whether you thought physical attraction was important in the beginning of a relationship, or if I'd be able to, or I guess any person for that matter, could have a successful relationship without there being a physical attraction.
Okay, thank you for your question.
Great question. I think physical attraction is very important, but I think both can occur. I think that my wife and I laugh about it, but she definitely tells me, well, you weren't my physical type when I first met you, but it allowed us to develop a friendship, because that wasn't what was physical attraction, wasn't pushing the connection. It was really about us having good conversations, and then in those conversations, the conversations actually bled over into a physical attraction, and it was more natural because it wasn't something we were shooting for. But that doesn't mean to say you can't be attracted first and then have a relationship. I think they can both happen simultaneously, or one before the other, but one doesn't exclude the other. What I think gets tricky is when people say they have to look like this. Then that's when you start getting into trouble. Because what you're saying is, I don't care what happens behind that, as long as it looks like what I'm attracted to. And then people start trying to make people that don't fit their personality, they try to make them fit in their lives in a way that they'll never fit.
Exactly. So do you believe in love at first sight?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I think we have time for a third caller. Hello, caller. You're on the air with Love and Happiness with Diamond D and Dr. Muhammad. How can we help you?
So I have a quick question. When you're dating someone, right, and how do you get to that level of commitment? What does a committed relationship really look like when you're dating?
Okay, thanks for your question. You want to
expound
on that?
Yeah, I have a very simple, complicated response, and I think that the commitment needs to come from the person making it. It's not something you're asking someone to give you. Okay, so a lot of times I think the common thread is that, well, we're dating now. Does that mean you're not going to see anyone? Because it means I'm not going to see anyone. I think the true commitment is, it wouldn't feel right if I did see someone else, right? So I always tell my wife, I don't cheat on you, not because of you, but because I'm not a cheater. I've made the commitment to myself, so that way it's not subjected to, if I'm arguing, then all these other things become an option. I've made a commitment to myself, and these are my values. So I think that the commitment conversation needs to be a conversation about values. Okay, we're at this point in our relationship. What do you value? Do you value me still seeing other people? Or what? And that's fair versus an assumption, or hoping by me asking you that one thing, you're understanding all the thousands of things I mean with it. Just say, well, let's talk about values. Because a lot of people may not really talk about it because they're so elated to have the person in their life, but you need to lay that out smooth, because that's those expectations that go unmanaged. Well, I thought you knew me. I only know what you told me. I only know what you were okay sharing with me. Versus, let's just have a conversation about it and be willing to say it, especially as a male. I don't want you to see anyone else. Sometimes people are waiting to hear that. They're hoping you say it. It's important to me that this is saved for me. That's okay. And I think that, speaking of love at first sight, if someone's in love with you in that way, they want to protect you in that way, that they'll honor that. If they choose not to honor it, then you got to have another conversation. Right. And it may not be about necessarily not loving you, but it may be about values or different values.
Well, how do you navigate that situation if a person is ready to commit and the other person that they're with are not at that same commitment level?
You have to be willing to let people go. And that's one of the things that I think is the hardest, because there's actual chemicals released when you're in love. Oxytocin, same chemical that's released when you smell a newborn, and it's designed to make you connected, want to be around that being. And so when you're away from them, there's a physical draw. And understand that just because you're having feelings about not being with that person, that's a natural part of love, and that's a natural part of those chemicals kind of leaving your body. Not, they must be the right one for me because I'm feeling all of this. Not necessarily. That's not always true, because that line of thinking makes you also believe there could be no one else that could ever make me feel this way. Because then you're more committed to a concept than the reality. So you'll be committed emotionally to someone that's not committed to you emotionally, and thus the imbalance begins. And you're reinforcing the person doing it because you're staying. I can treat you bad and still come over. Well, guess what? I'm gonna probably keep doing.
Very good answer. So you are a very accomplished individual. Who are your secret silent influencers? The people that you've met on your career journey that has been an inspiration to you.
There's Dr. Norman Chambers. That's met him first, a black psychologist in San Diego. Dr. Christopher Edwards is the one that brought me where I currently live in Durham. He brought me to Duke for my medical psychology internship. I'm also inspired by my wife because she's actually, I met her in the mental health field, so she understands what I do. So it's kind of nice to talk about that. But then also know there's other things to do. And also my father-in-law, Thomas Long, because of his seeing how to manage family and really understand what that looks like. And it's more than just the money that you make and the food you put on the table. It's your presence, your thoughts, and your contribution. So those are the current ones.
Okay. What are some of the valuable lessons that they have taught you that you can share with the viewing audience?
One of the biggest ones that I remember Dr. Edwards taught me one time, he said, if you work 8 hours in a day, you have to work 16 when you get home. And that's very different than what I thought, because when I grew up as a young boy, the men would come home and eat and kind of disappear. So I'm thinking as I got older, I get to kind of fall back, chill in the house, do my thing. No, you have to be present.
Yes.
You have to be physically and mentally. And it took a while, but I interact with my children more, I play with them more, but also understand that I'm actually building their foundation in those interactions. So those are definitely, that's one of the biggest ones. And also finding things that I enjoyed. I like to cook, but I cook for family and stuff like that, but also giving myself permission to enjoy what I enjoy versus giving.
You have to have the balance.
Because when I didn't have the balance, I found myself being angry and irritated, not knowing how it was because I was cheating myself. So those are the important things.
What do you say is the secret of your success?
Being too stupid to know I shouldn't. That's really, really what it is. All of the people, a good portion of the people that mentioned me that I consider successful say they were just very smart people. But they said, but I just couldn't believe I couldn't. I literally went from undergraduate to a doctorate program. So I never got a master's. I went to a doctorate program. I'm looking back, should have never been in that program. Not because of my skill set. I accept I've always been smart, but I understand more academic preparation. And I literally look at that as going from high school to the pros, no college, high school to a pro, and as far as MBA status, something like that. And you got to be able to run when you get in those environments. But I was too stupid to know that. So I had to learn. It's literally like trying to land a plane while you're learning how to land a plane. Right. Literally. But that to me is also the spice of life. One of my friends in graduate school, he said to me, he used to call me Terrell Owens. And that's when Terrell Owens was really big around that time when I was in graduate school. And he said to me, he said, well, you have a chip on your shoulder. And I said, I call it motivation. We would bump heads on that because he was in my opinion, very submissive and go with the flow. And I also see genius in that too now. Just not how I'm built. And I mean, I got punished for it academically by professors and stuff like that. But one of the things that happened at the end of when I graduated, our friend said to me, he says, you're going to be able to help way more people than I would have. And I said, why? He said, because you didn't let them take away from you what they were trying to take. Exactly. You were able to hold on to it. And he said, he even said, and I even tried to take it from you. He acknowledged, he's like, you were right, I was wrong. But I couldn't articulate all of that at the time. I just knew I can't go that way. There's someone that needs me there the same way that I am now. And that's why when I go into rooms at schools, when I'm speaking to minority children, and let me be clear, I don't mean to limit that at all to African American children, minority children of different ethnicities, and even older adults, Medicare, Medicaid, impoverished and everything. And they all just say, my God, you're a person. Mm-hmm. And yes, but I realized that's what I was trying to hold on to the whole time. Mm-hmm. I wasn't trying to become this academic that was not approachable, use big words. I tell my patients, I say, my job was to go to school and learn what all those big words meant, to be able to metabolize them and translate them so that you know what they mean. Right. Not you got to come into this doctor's appointment and get educated on everything. Mm-hmm. That's no. And so I think those are the things that I kind of hold on to at this point.
Good information. Where can we get your book?
This wonderful piece of work, My Silent Loud, it's available on Amazon. So if you type in My Silent Loud book, it'll find it. But you can also go to my website, www.mysilentloud.com, and it'll just link you right to Amazon. There's also contact information if anyone wants to contact me, they can do it via the website.
Thank you, Dr. Muhammad, for being on the show.
Thank you.
You can find Dr. Muhammad's book on Amazon, and you can check out more of Love and Happiness on News Talk 1450 in the D.C., Maryland, Virginia area at 11:30 a.m. every Thursday on The Chris Thomas Show or on the News Talk 1450 app. Thank you to the entire Chris Thomas Show radio family, and especially my big brother, Chris Thomas, who put me on his show. You can follow more of Love and Happiness on SoundCloud, Facebook, IG, and Twitter. Let me leave you with one of my favorite quotes on Love and Happiness. It comes from Dr. Maya Angelou, and she says, I am grateful to have been loved and to be loved now, and to be able to love because love liberates. Thank you for watching Love and Happiness with Diamond D. God bless you, and I love you.